Hey guys, so today I'm just going to put together a very quick video, and it's something that I've come across recently called Plugin Doctor. And essentially the reason why I've been using it and why many of you might have seen on our Instagram that we've been developing a plugin for the past sort of 9 months. I started using this purely to test what our plugin is actually doing in terms of the curvature of it. But the reason why I'm doing this video is not because some of you may be putting together a plugin in your spare time, but it's more so that when I teach a lot of my students or clients, I always find that a lot of them seem to shy away from plugins that don't have a nice fancy display on it. And this is more talking towards EQs. And often the nicest EQs and the ones that have the most color are often ones that don't actually have that fancy display to it. So the reason why I'm showing you guys this is it's sort of a way to understand what your plugins are actually doing. You know, the shape of a bell, how wide or how narrow it is. When you put a shelf on an EQ, like where, say you've got it set at 7K, does it actually start boosting at 7K? Where does it start boosting? So it's a really cool piece of software to basically learn and understand plugins for, more so towards EQs that don't have a nice fancy display. So I'm just going to quickly show you very basic understanding on how to use this. So essentially what we're going to be using is the linear analysis. Right at the top left, you've got load 1 and load 2. That is because you can basically load up 2 plugins to do a nice comparison between the two. You've got an M, which is basically to hide it, and an X is basically to remove that plugin that you've got loaded up. So let's go and add a plugin for the time being. So you just have to locate where your plugins are. You're on Mac Components, and let's try TR5 EQP. Go to Components. So let's do an emulation of a Pultec. This is TR5's emulation. So we can bring up 1 there. So let's start with 1 for the time being. So what we can immediately see and understand from this plugin is the curve that it's created without boosting or attenuating anything at all. So the first thing that I notice is that from 100 Hertz, it starts to roll everything off. And, you know, towards about 500, we've got a bit of a bump. And then from about 2K onwards, we've got a sort of a wiggly line towards that top end. So what's really cool about this is as soon as I start boosting, it will show on the graph exactly what is going on. And it's a nice way to understand what this shelf is actually doing and the way that it moves, because it actually changes the curve the more I boost it. So let's say I boost it by 5. Let's change it over to 60, 100. You can actually see the way that it's doing it on different selected frequencies. So let's attenuate as well, because it's a famous thing to do with the Pultec. So let's attenuate by, like, let's say 4. So boosting by 5, attenuating by 4. So we can see here exactly what is going on with this plugin when we have those settings set up. So if we hide that for a second, and let's do a little comparison now. So let's use the UAD version of this. So Pultec. So the first thing that I basically see, the difference between the two, is that we have an immediate gain of, say, 1 dB. So it's a nice way to understand that as soon as I load up this plugin, I'm going to get a gain increase of 1 dB. So that's one thing that you can learn already from plugins. Exactly, you know, if they're transparent and flat as soon as you turn them on, or if there is some sort of gain increase. And the reason why that's important that I tell a lot of people to watch out for is that as soon as you turn this plugin on, you're going to be like, oh shit, that's done something cool. When actually, there's just a gain increase. One thing that I've seen on this plugin as well is it actually rolls off a little bit at the top end. That sort of warm sound that everyone is used to, you know, rolling off a little bit at the top end. It gives that nice character before you even do anything at all. So let's try and replicate exactly what we've done over here. So boosting by 5, cutting by 4. So let's boost by 5. Let's cut by 4. I'm going to hide this for 2 seconds, but this is exactly what the curve of the UAD version is doing. So if I hide that and I go back to the TR5, what I did notice from the beginning is we did have an increase of around about a dB. So if I put this back down, I just boost this back up to around about a dB or so, we can get a slightly better understanding of the comparison between the two, because that is kind of the point of this. So if we boost this by 5, attenuate by 4, what I can now do is unhide our UAD emulation, and we can compare what the curves are doing between the two plugins. So yes, this is cool for basically comparing different plugins and seeing what they're doing. We've got a roll off from now around about 50 Hertz with the TR5, and we don't get one with the UAD. So I really, really like this for basically understanding what my plugins are doing. Let me just bring up the last one here. This is something that I show a lot of my students when I'm trying to teach them how to use different plugins that you can't see displays. So SPL, let's use the pass EQ. Fairly complicated EQ if you haven't ever seen it before, just a mid-side EQ or left and right for channel 1 and channel 2. So as soon as we load this up, again, we can understand what it's doing to begin with without boosting or cutting anything. What's cool about this is we have, say, for instance, 80 Hertz. We can understand that that is working on a shelf. So that's the first thing that I would understand. Okay, cool. Bottom end, that's working on a shelf. Same here with when I'm cutting, it's on a shelf. Mid-band here, what happens when I boost, say, 1K? Let's boost that up. I can really understand what the size of the bell is, like how wide or how narrow this is. Because there's no control over how, if you want to make it wider or if you want to make it narrower, you need to understand what it's actually doing. And then the last one, which normally throws a lot of people, because you have a high frequency boost Q, so you can change the Q on this. So if I give this a small boost, you can see what it's doing. It's in terms of a shelf. And this actually threw me when I was testing this out, because I thought that if I went all the way to the right, it was actually a lot narrower than what actually shows up on Plugin Doctor. So yeah, hopefully this video kind of helps you. I know that I've been obsessed now with basically running loads of my plugins through this and seeing exactly what they're doing, exactly the shapes and what they're doing. Gives me a better understanding when I'm coming to mixing, you know, what a track needs, how wide, how narrow. If I'm rolling something off, where is it rolling off to? If I load up a plugin, is it going to cut off, you know, from 100 down to begin with before I'm doing anything at all? So yeah, hopefully this makes sense, and, you know, give it a go. It will definitely help understanding your plugins and, you know, hopefully make you a better mix engineer.